Every evening, one lonely office worker escaped his dead-end life the exact same way, reading a web novel on the subway home. The novel was called 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, and for more than 10 years, he was its one and only reader. Then, one ordinary night, he reached the very last chapter. The story he'd poured a decade of his life into was finally over. And that is when the nightmare he had only ever read about crawled straight off the page. A grinning little horned imp, floating in his stopped subway car. The apocalypse from his favorite novel was coming true, word for word, right in front of him. His name is Kim Dokja, an unremarkable contract worker at a nobody company. And in Korean, his name literally means the reader. Monsters, deadly survival scenarios, a countdown to the end of the world, all of it lifted from a book only he has finished. Which means he holds the one advantage no one else on Earth has. He knows every twist, every monster, and every way to survive. This is Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Let's get into it. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Apex Manhwa, your home for handcrafted manhwa recaps. If you enjoy the video, do me a quick favor, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you never miss a recap, and drop a comment telling me what you think. I read every single one. All right, let's get into it. There are 3 ways to survive in a ruined world. That single line opens a web novel called 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, and it promises that whoever is reading it will live. After more than 3,000 chapters, our hero has finally reached the ending. For real, that's it? That's the end? He mutters, almost disappointed. Let me introduce him. When he tells people his name, he says, "I am Dokja," and they always misunderstand. Oh, you're an only child? Because in Korean, the word can mean an only son. No, he sighs, that's not what I meant. His name is Kim Dokja, and his father chose it on purpose. Written another way, Dokja means the reader. Here's the full picture. Kim Dokja, 28, graduated from a third-rate rural university, now grinding away as a contract worker at a big company subsidiary. His one hobby, the thing that gets him through it all, is reading web novels on the way home from work. But today, his commute is a little different from usual. First, he runs into Yu Sang-ah from Human Resources, the most popular woman in the entire company. He can't quite believe it. To think I'd bump into Yu Sang-ah, of all people, down here in the subway, he thinks. She even smells nice. Plenty of men at the office line up to drive her home every night. Yet here she is, riding the train like everyone else because someone stole her bike. And she's not wasting the ride. She's quietly studying Spanish, muttering a phrase that means, "Can you lend me some money?" We really do live in different genres, he thinks. She notices how intently he's reading. Were you so absorbed in Dr. SSI? She asks. You're so diligent. They trade favorite authors, and he realizes something a little sad. She reads famous literary novels everyone respects. But the book that has swallowed the last 10 years of his life is a web novel almost no one else has even heard of, one he is quietly certain he is the only person on Earth still reading. And now that lonely little story, the one that told him he would survive, has finally reached its end. He has no idea that its ending is about to become his beginning. It started small. The train carriage went dark, and then, mid-tunnel, it simply stopped. Train stall all the time, Dokja told himself. Nothing strange about that. And yet the only thing his mind could reach for was the opening lines of a very familiar novel. There was no way it was possible. It was ridiculous. But the word kept surfacing anyway. An imp. Then he saw it. A small pair of horns, a fluffy creature wrapped in a bundle of hay, floating in the air. Too grotesque to be a fairy, too sinister to be an angel, too harmless to be the devil. The other passengers gaped at the floating thing. What is that? No way, one of them breathed. This has to be a joke. But Dokja knew exactly what it was. In the novel, it had a name, an imp. This was the moment he had read about 100 times, never once believing it could happen. The instant fiction and reality perfectly overlapped. Around him, people scrambled for explanations. Is this augmented reality? What's it even saying? But Dokja wondered if he was the only person alive who recognized this moment for what it was. There was no doubt now. It was an imp, The very creature that, across thousands of chapters of the ruined world, was responsible for every calamity to come. The imp fumbled with its own broadcast, muttering that the Korean language patch hadn't loaded, that the annoying thing kept spitting out something like Spanish. Then, finally, "Can you all hear me now?" The passengers still thought it was a stunt. One woman asked if this was for a movie because she had an audition to get to and was short on time. The imp told them it had important things to explain. "Please sit down and listen." But the carriage only erupted louder, everyone demanding it start the train right now. To Dokja, none of the panic was surprising. This was the story development he already knew, unfolding exactly as written, which meant he also knew what came next, and that he needed to stop it. But how? When he was just one reader in a screaming train car. He turned to his co-worker. "You sang ah," he said quietly. "Don't move." The imp's patience snapped. "This is not a movie scene," it roared. "Not a dream, nor the reality you thought you knew. Do you understand?" And with that, whatever sliver of doubt Dokja had left finally vanished. Yeah, this was real. It vanished the moment the inside of the carriage was painted in blood. The imp addressed the survivors almost cheerfully. "You've all lived wonderful lives, haven't you? Eating and breathing and sleeping since the day you were born, never once paying for the privilege. But those good times were over. Nothing," it reminded them, "stays free forever." A finance manager tried to buy his way out, waiving his identity, offering $1 million, $2 million, as much as they wanted if the imp would just let them go. The imp studied the offer with something like amusement. Money, plant fiber that a lot of humans have agreed to call valuable. But it was worth nothing in the higher dimension, the imp said, and warned him that if he tried anything like that again, his head would burst. Enough explaining then. Better if they earned their keep themselves, the imp decided, and besides, their debt had only piled higher the longer they chattered. Text bloomed in the air before every passenger. The main scenario had arrived. Its terms were simple and merciless. Proof of value. Kill one or more living beings. Time limit, 30 minutes. Reward for success. Death for failure. The imp wished them all the best of luck and asked one small thing in return. "Please, keep it interesting." Panic spread through the train carriage. The police weren't picking up, and Yu Sang-ah could barely hold herself together. "Calm down," Dokja told her. "Just calm down." He tried to explain it in terms she could grasp. "You've played that game where the world ends and only a handful of people survive, right? Think of it exactly like that." Then he said the thing no one wanted to hear. "You're in that game right now." "A game," she echoed. Dokja nodded. "Every game has rules, and rules can be followed." "Rules? Like what?" That, he admitted, was exactly what they needed to find out. The imp had already left its mark. Corpses were scattered across the carriage like discarded garbage. A salaryman sat trembling in his own blood. An old woman in the priority seat murmured prayers to a god who wasn't answering. The situation was still impossible to believe, and yet there was nothing left to doubt. The ruined world survival novel he'd read for over a decade, 3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, had become the reality unfolding in front of him. So he made himself think, what did he need to do to survive in this new world? The scenario spelled out cold. Proof of value. Kill one or more living beings. 30-minute limit. Reward coins. Penalty for failure, death. Then a stranger seized control of the carriage. "Everyone calm down," he ordered. "Stop what you're doing, breathe, and pay attention." "Who are you?" someone demanded. He flashed an official ID. "Ministry of National Defense," he said, as if a national emergency were the most ordinary thing in the world. He was an active first lieutenant of the 6,502nd Army Battalion. For the safety of all civilians, the lieutenant took charge. But what surprised Dokja wasn't the man's confidence. "First Lieutenant Lee Hyun-sung," he says, "the Steel Sword Master." Lee Hyun-sung was a recurring character straight out of the novel, and Dokja knew his name far too well. But something was wrong. As a reader, Dokja was certain. This was not how Lee Hyun-sung was first introduced. In the story, he came after the first scenario ended. So, what was going on here? The Prime Minister's emergency broadcast blamed unidentified terrorists in Seoul and beyond. A terror attack, Dokja thought. The most convenient lie, and one he already knew by heart. Someone asked why the prime minister was speaking at all. Word was they'd already gotten to the president. For real? Then the imp cut back in, amused. You still don't understand. Does this feel like a game to you? Research says the people of this country are good at video games. So, it purred, why don't we increase the difficulty level? The clock lurched. The time limit had been shortened. A bonus penalty appeared. If the first murder didn't happen within 5 minutes, every living thing in the zone would be wiped out. Everything was still unfolding exactly as the novel predicted. And yet, Dokja couldn't shake the unease that had been creeping up on him. Lee Hyun-sung had appeared out of order. So how come he, the one Dokja was really waiting for, hadn't shown up yet? If the story ran the way Dokja knew it, he should appear right about now. A scream tore through the car. There's been a murder in the back carriage. Don't let them through. Something slammed into the passengers before they could block the door. What was that? There's something invisible in front of the wall. The imp watched it all with delight. Some interesting developments, it mused, though a few places hadn't even begun. Allow me to show you what happens if nothing happens in the next 5 minutes, it said. Here's a little gift. Then the imp's voice fell flat. The time limit has been reached. Payment settlement will begin. The screaming turned to pleading. Save me. Open the door. But there was no door left to open. Fun, isn't it? The imp asked. Well? And Dokja was left staring at a world that had already begun to break from the script he thought he'd memorized. The world had just ended, and Kim Dokja was still stuck on the same question everyone else was screaming. What the hell was going on? But unlike everyone else, something felt off to him. Strange. Wrong in a way he couldn't quite name yet. He knew this story. He'd read it 1,000 times. So why hadn't that guy appeared yet? The knowledge he had of the novel was colliding with events he didn't recognize. The script he'd memorized was already going off the rails. His only lifeline was to read the web novel again. But the work no longer existed. It had been erased completely, and something this unpopular would have no re-uploads anywhere. Then a message arrived. The paid service would begin at 7 p.m. It said, "This will help you. Good luck," with a single file attached. It couldn't be. It just couldn't be. He opened the attachment. There was the whole novel itself. 3 ways to survive in a ruined world, gifted straight to his phone. Wasn't this illegal? Or did it not count, since it came from the author themselves? A system message flared to life. A unique trait had been acquired, a unique skill activated. Every survivor of the ruined world would receive one. Just like a game. Exactly like the novel had promised. Which meant the first thing he needed to do was find out what his own trait and skill actually were. He reached for the traits menu, but the window refused him, unable to activate traits menu. Without it, he had no way of knowing what power he'd been given. Whatever. If he couldn't check his stats, he'd just read the file, the guidance meant to help at every step. And then it happened. His reading speed accelerated past anything human. He devoured the opening of the ruined world novel in less than a minute. Was that his trait? But something nagged at him. The train car was numbered 3807. In the novel, it had been 3707. That single digit explained the uneasiness he'd been feeling. The plot was slightly off because his carriage sat directly behind the one carrying the prologue's true protagonist. And he knew exactly what that meant for everyone around him. In the novel, out of this entire carriage, only 2 people survived. That was when the violence began. A man snarled at a terrified passenger begging to escape, telling him to shut the hell up. The kid's name was Kim Namun. Dokja looked at the woman beside him, his co-worker Yu Sang-ah, and knew from the story that she would probably die here. Only 2 would live. Everyone else in this carriage was fated to die, including, he realized, himself. Kim Na-moon rounded on the crowd, sneering. Did they still not understand the situation they were in? People screamed to be saved, but he laughed it off. The army wasn't coming. No one was. So he declared they needed to decide who had to die. Of course he knew what they were thinking. Murder just to survive? That's what animals do. And they were right, he admitted. But could they still say that now? This was force majeure, kill or be killed, and the world they knew was over. In this new world, he told them, they needed new rules. As the carriage collapsed into panic and vague, useless morals, it was Kim Nam-moon who hammered the nail into the coffin. The ultimatum was simple. If no one died within 5 minutes, everyone in the carriage would die. Watching it unfold, Dokja remembered a line he'd once read in a novel. The executioners pull the lever at the same time, so that it remains unknown who killed the person on death row. He just watched, as if it were happening in another dimension. In the novel, that nameless old lady was the first sacrifice, and changing events might narrow his own paths to survival. But was simply standing by, for that reason alone, really the right thing to do? Someone snapped, "She's going to die at this rate," and a figure lunged toward the old woman. Others shouted her back, "Don't, it's dangerous. If you go, you'll be the one to die." It was Yu Sang-ah, refusing to just watch. Some people, Dokja thought, stay admirable even when the story genre shifts to horror. But Yu Sang-ah wasn't the one who could change this story. She wasn't the main character of this world. So he stopped her. "Stay here," he said. "Just listen to me this once, and I'll never meddle with you again." The reason he'd done nothing until now, he admitted, wasn't fear of Kim Nam-moon and the others. Nor was it because he agreed with their inhuman cruelty. He had simply been waiting for the right timing. Because all of this, every second of it, was leading somewhere. Now, the moment had finally come, and Kim Dokja moved. A new window unfurled before him. Proof of value. A main scenario had begun, with a 30-minute time limit and a single penalty for failure. Death. The clock was already running down, and the ruined world had only just begun to test him. Something was burning. Smoke curled up from nowhere, and Dokja's first thought wasn't fear. It was, where from? The mob froze mid-motion, half of them screaming, the rest too stunned to understand what they were even looking at. Because this was the moment the paid service began. Chapter 5, Episode 1, and Dokja was the only reader who already knew how it ended. He'd shoved Kim Na-won aside, and to everyone watching it looked like he was just saving the old lady. But that was never the only thing he was aiming for. The crowd howled at him to keep going, to finish the kill, while Dokja crouched and rifled through the wreckage. It was somewhere here. It had to be. He found it, and he took it. "Let me borrow this." No explanation, no hesitation, just a man reaching for the one piece the script had promised him. Then he turned on all of them. "Everyone stop. Even if you kill that old lady, you won't survive. Say you go through with it," he told them. "Kill the old lady, clear the first murder condition, and buy yourselves a little time." Fine. But the imps' rule was clear. Every single one of you has to kill at least one person. So who's next after her? The stranger beside you? The math turned ugly fast. 50-50 odds, and the loudest of them sneered that pushovers like Dokja would just be next in line. "Yeah," Dokja said, almost bored. "I knew you'd say that. There was no need for the gamble at all," he told them. There was a way to survive without a single one of them becoming a murderer. How, they demanded. Did they forget the actual clearing condition? It never said kill a person. It said kill one or more living beings. A loophole hidden in plain sight, and Dokja was the only one who'd read the fine print. Then he showed them what he'd been holding. Insects. The realization hit like ice water. Insects? Just one of those was enough. One crushed bug, and the murder condition was met without a single human dying. The mob's fury, which had been fixed entirely on the old lady, swung around and landed squarely on him. And Dokja wondered distantly why. Because in the middle of all this horror, his heart was racing with something like joy. He was smiling. Perhaps this was the kind of person he'd always been. A pane of light flared. The first murder achievement fulfilled. 100 coins dropped as a bonus reward. The clock read 3 minutes remaining, and someone was already shrieking at Dokja, demanding to know why he'd done it. Because there had only ever been 3 insects in a box. Not nearly enough to save everyone. Not enough to go around. So he'd simply let them go? Kim Na-won laughed, delighted. That's right, Dokja admitted. But Na-won saw through him. No one sane would do that just to be fair. Be honest, he said. You just wanted to watch this, didn't you? And that, Dokja knew, was exactly the kind of person Kim Na-won was. Cruel, careless, and capable of enjoying a moment like this one. The boy who'd one day be called the delusional demon was never just a regular edgy teenager. He'd waited his whole life for the world to end, and when it did, he adapted at an abnormal speed. Then he turned to Dokja with an offer. Team up with me. What do you say? But the scenario wasn't finished. A new pain unfurled. The proof of value. Kill one or more living beings or die. The timer ticked down, under 2 minutes now, and the real test was only just beginning. The kid was frantic, spinning in circles. Where did it go? It was right here just a second ago. Move, he snapped at the old woman, shielding herself behind Dokja. He was going to catch that insect, no matter what. Dokja did the math coldly. Team up with Kim Namwon, and his immediate survival would be all but guaranteed. If he hadn't read Ways of Survival, his answer might have been different. But he had. Meeting the boy in person was one thing. But Dokja was the reader who already knew his entire past, present, and future. So he stayed calm. I have some business with the granny behind you, he said. Could you step aside? Namwon only sneered. He couldn't let the insect he'd caught slip out of his grasp. Are you playing hero of justice now? The boy jeered. Or do you just have split personalities? It reminded Dokja exactly how much this brat had infuriated him on the page. Do you think you'll be a teenager forever, kid? Turns out you're the type of person I hate most. Namwon spat back. And with that, the talking was over. A system message confirmed it. The character Kim Namwon looks down on you. His favorability had slightly decreased. Move. The boy lunged, blade first, done with words. But Dokja read the strike coming and slipped it. I knew you'd do exactly that, he thought. This bastard is precisely as I imagined. Then Namwon's Chinibu attribute triggered its exclusive skill, and the air itself seemed to darken around him. A skill window bloomed. Blackening, level 1. What the hell? The boy laughed, drunk on the surge. I'm so fucking strong. It was that raw talent, Dokja knew, that made the protagonist recruit this psychopath in the first place. Then Dokja's own reward unlocked. He had met the conditions to use stage 1 of his exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint. Dokja stared at the name of the very thing he'd been all along. The skill activated. Suddenly Dokja could read every twitch of Namwon's body a beat before it happened. With Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint running, it was as if he could read his opponent's mind like text on a page. But only let him dodge. He wasn't skilled enough to strike back yet, so he did the one thing he could buy time. A timer ticked in the corner. Kid, the old gambler grinned. You've got 2 minutes left now. Dokja saw the trap. If Namwon killed the old lady now, he'd clear the scenario outright. No matter what, he couldn't let this boy advance to the next scenario. Kiki, Namwon laughed as Dokja moved to intercept. I knew you'd do that. The blade bit in, and Dokja hissed. It hurt like his skin was burning. The boy's knife-fighting skill was no joke. Death was right behind him now. Literally right behind him. If he lost to Kim Namwon here, he would die. Simple as that. Such a predictable world, Dokja thought. The weak die, and the strong survive. But hadn't it always been this way? A dog-eat-dog world with a strong preyed on the weak, only now the mask was off. He steeled himself. If he wanted to survive, he had to be willing to do what survival demanded. Let's end this now, he said. You don't even have the strength left to run away, old man. Then Dokja asked the strange question that would decide everything. Do you think insect eggs count as lives, Kim Namwon? Huh? The boy scoffed. What's with that nonsense? The answer, Dokja said, is yes. The system agreed. You have killed a living being. 100 coins obtained as an additional reward. And then it repeated. Another kill, another 100 coins, over and over. The coins piled up fast. A prompt offered to walk him through the coin usage tutorial. Skip, Dokja said, and dumped everything, 2,700 coins, straight into physique. His physique level shot up dramatically. His body's durability greatly increased in an instant. That was the trick. During mating season, grasshoppers lay over 100 eggs at a time, and every egg had counted as a life he could farm. Well, what? Namwon stammered as the tide turned. I won't be the one to die here. Please, the boy begged, hunting for a hidden bug that wasn't there. You will, Dokja answered. Namwon slashed in desperation. Die, damn you, just die already. Why won't you die? But Dokja's reinforced body no longer bent to that blade. Then the clock ran out. The time limit has expired, the system announced. The payment settlement will begin. Namwon screamed as the scenario's judgment came due, his advantage gone. A message settled over the car. Main Scenario 1, Proof of Value, cleared. Survivors on this train car, 5 people. In the quiet after, someone asked the question that would define what came next. Really? What's your group's name? Dokja began to answer. We are. The message flared before his eyes. Main Scenario 1, Proof of Value, cleared. Department 3807, 5 survivors. 5 names remained. Lee Hyun-sung, Yu Sang-ah, the co-worker who'd sat 2 desks over. Lee Gil-young, a child. Han Myung-go, the deputy manager. And Kim Dokja himself, the sole reader, still standing where everyone else had fallen. One of the doomed had begged him for rescue. Kim Dokja refused. People's lives are important. The man had cried, that's obvious. But that, Dokja answered, was a law of the previous world. A new world requires new laws. You're right, Dokja admitted quietly. I am the same as you. He could have saved all of them. It would be a lie to say he felt no remorse. But he wondered why the guilt never quite landed. How was he this composed? It was as if he were simply reading a novel, which once he had been. The system tallied it coldly. He had killed a total of 124 living beings. 1 grasshopper, and 123 grasshopper eggs. The rewards poured in, coins stacking by the thousands, plus the regular clear reward, minus the channel usage fee. And then a title he hadn't asked for. Due to excessive kills, he'd earned the mass murderer achievement. 1 world had been destroyed, and a new one born. Around him, the last panic survivors clung to the hope of finally going home. Then a voice cut through it all. It's been a long time, he said. Kim Dokja, the only reader who knew this world's finale, watched it begin. He alone knew how the story ended. The subway lurched to a stop. Something was coming, and the survivors froze in terror. It was a sea serpent, a monster that would later be classified 7th grade in ways of survival. But scenarios take priority over everything in this world. As long as they were protected by the scenario, it couldn't touch them. For now, Dokja added silently. Above them, the Dakibi danced in joy. 21 stars crowned him, 1 for each constellation tuned to his channel, the mysterious masterminds who watch from distant nebulas. 21 wasn't many, but for a beginner Dakibi, it was unusually high. No wonder he was celebrating. Dokja understood why. In the original ways of survival, Kim Namwon would have slaughtered most of the compartment and survived. But Dokja had killed him instead. The system confirmed the ripple. Due to the death of the character Kim Namwon, 2 constellations showed a faint hostility toward him. A delay notice followed, a settlement bug spawned by that off-script kill. Some of the watching constellations, Dokja guessed, were probably furious. It struck him as funny. Until yesterday, he was the one watching them. Now their positions had switched. Then coins arrived, 500 of them. If some constellations hated him, obviously some would love him. In the end, he thought they'd pay the observation fee with their own lives. So if they wanted to watch, they could watch him to their heart's content. Then a voice broke in. Dokja Sasai, are you all right? It was Yu Sang-ah. I'm sorry, he told her. I couldn't save her. Dokja Sasai. How did you? She started, staring at him. Yes. He answered. She fell silent. It was a coincidence, he said, that the bug cage had landed the way it did. That's why it won't happen again. A warning wrapped as an apology. She didn't know everything, but she was smart enough to have survived the chaos. She probably understood what he meant. His decisions had saved some and killed others. No matter who lived, he told himself, he had no right to their gratitude. Then the Dakibi crowed. Everyone, look at all these survivors. 5 survivors, more than Dokja had expected. He counted on Lee Hyun-sung, a good build and great reflexes. And the kid, he realized, watching him. Lee Gil-young. Kid, Dokja called. Do you want to live? He asked. This wasn't foolish sympathy, he told himself. Then let's go together. Hypocrisy, he called it, even as he said it. Coins arrived, moved by his good deed. It didn't matter if it was unmerited. Even he, Dokja admitted, wanted to survive in this world. taking future events into account. He needed to seize the constellation's attention now, while so many entertaining things were happening. And lastly, there was Deputy Manager Han Myung-go. Truly, Dokja thought, a human with lots of luck. Han Myung-go demanded to be released, insisting they cleared every condition. But outside, a monster prowled, and Dokja wondered why the rich man had been riding the subway home at all, when he'd spent weeks bragging about his brand-new car. Then the Dakibi spoke again. Anyways, he said, I'm impressed. He'd had low expectations for this compartment, yet they'd passed the first scenario. You've proven, he told them, that even bugs deserve to survive. For clearing the first scenario, he announced, they were entitled to the sponsorship of Constellations. Shouldn't they be rewarded for overcoming such hardship? Why is everyone so down? The Dakibi crowed. This is truly an amazing reward. Nobody there understood the words constellations or sponsorship except Dokja, so their blank reaction was natural. Let me explain, the Dakibi offered. Right now you are all unimaginably weak. In this state, he warned, the next scenario would kill them instantly. But there existed great and benevolent beings in the universe who pitied them and wished to sponsor them. Who is sponsoring us? One survivor asked. Geez, the Dakibi sighed. You really don't understand anything. Instead of explaining 100 times, he decided they should just see for themselves. Chapter 8 opened on the second episode of the scenario, and the Dakibi called it the round of the protagonist. A window bloomed across Kim Dokja's vision, a sponsor selection. For Constellations wanted him, an abyssal black flame dragon, a demon-like judge of fire, a secretive plotter, and a prisoner of the golden headband. 4 of them, he mused. Beside him, Yu Sang-ah stared at her own screen, baffled, calling out his name for help. She had strange options too, and no idea what any of it meant. Just relax, he told her, and think of it as an aptitude test. The sponsor selection was a system where the constellations watching through the Dakibi's channels could pick a human they fancied and make them their incarnation. For one of Dokja, Constellations never revealed their true names. But the novel's protagonist had received 5 offers at the start. So 4 was no small number, and words like abyssal and demon were clues to deduce who they really were. For the sole reader of Ways of Survival, though, it was a piece of cake. He began working down the list. First, the abyssal black flame dragon, a powerful entity leading the constellations of the Black Cloud, its true name absurdly long. Its incarnation would gain devastating attack power, perfect for the brutal early scenarios. But the more that power was used, the more the mind rotted, until the incarnation fell into madness and became a murderer. In the original novel, it had sponsored Kim Namwon, a boy with the Chinibu streak it favored. So why? Dokja wondered had it chosen him. On to the second. This one, he decided, was unpleasant. Rejected. And yet he could hardly believe he was even seeing it offered. The demon-like Judge of Fire, a name overflowing with evil and sin. But demon-like meant precisely that it was not, in fact, a demon. An entity that passed judgment through flame could only be one thing, the Archangel Uriel. Someone in the story had chosen this sponsor. A decent pick, powerful, but the constellations of absolute good imposed ridiculous constraints on their power. He marked it pending and moved to the third. The Secretive Plotter. Even having read the novel thoroughly, this was the first time the sole reader had ever seen this option, maybe a constellation only briefly mentioned. Not a powerful one, judging by that feeble-sounding name. Pending as well. And finally the last. He never expected an offer from this constellation so early in the story. Prisoner of the Golden Headband. Prisoner sounded grim at first glance, but it was what followed that mattered. The world's smallest prison. The handsome monkey king with the golden gaze and fiery eyes, enduring the pain of his binding head shackle, master of Manhwa. The great sage, heaven's equal. Power to destroy hundreds of incarnations with a single sweep of his staff, to annihilate thousands of monsters with one lightning strike. The author had written it with such vigor Dokja still remembered every word. Why would such a being want him? If he chose the great sage as a sponsor, could he ever win against him? The question lingered, unanswered. Then the announcement came. The sponsor selection had ended. Someone, the Dakibi purred, had made an interesting decision. Was everyone done? Oh ho, now this was something, it laughed, but why not? They'd have another chance anyway. Since everyone had finished selecting, it told them to rest a while. They had to leave to prepare the next scenario. See you in 10 minutes. With the imp gone, the survivors gathered. A broad man introduced himself. Lee Hyun-sung, a soldier, awkwardly glad to meet them. Kim Dokja gave his name back. Maybe you should say he was a soldier now, Hyun-sung admitted, unable to reach his unit. His handshake was crushing, and Dokja recognized him at once. The tanker of the novel's early stages, living up to his name. Dokja decided he absolutely had to keep Lee Hyun-sung with him. Yu Sing-ah thanked him for earlier. Without him, she said, they'd all have been killed, or worse, no longer human. Then a smug voice cut in. A job well done, Mr. Employee. Dokja froze. You know me, right, Dr. Sasai? Dokja said nothing. I do, he answered flatly. Han Myungo Sasai. The man bristled. Shouldn't he be called department head? This isn't the company, Dokja said. Just where had he learned those manners, Han fumed. Did he not want to come to work anymore? And he'd gone overboard earlier, too. Han Myungo Sasai. Dokja cut in. Please shut up. What? Did Han still not understand the situation? Should Dokja have just let that brat crack his skull open to knock his thoughts straight? Did he really think the company still existed now that the world had ended? Manasov was gone. And it wasn't just Han, Dokja said. Everyone needed to wake up. By the Dakibi's own words, this was no joke, and deep down, whether they said it or not, they all knew what was happening. A game-like interface confirmed it. Main Scenario 1. Proof of value. Kill 1 or more lives. Difficulty F. 30-minute limit. Reward 300 coins. Failure meant death. Was there still anyone who didn't understand? It still felt unreal. One of them murmured, like a fantasy novel he used to read in secret on duty. This really wasn't a dream? No, Dokja said. It was definitely reality. Did Dokja have something in mind, they asked. So what did they do now? A window flickered. His understanding of Lee Hyun-sung had increased, the character's trust taking root. We need to get out of here, Dokja said. Out? Were they insane? Han spluttered. Their heads would explode if they left. Dokja agreed they had to move forward, just not recklessly, all while quietly resolving to keep Lee Hyun-sung at his side no matter what. Then a sound. Had the next scenario already begun? No, someone said. The Dakibi hadn't returned. Then that meant, beyond that door, Dokja said, was the sole survivor of compartment 3707. And it was plainly obvious who that was. The lone survivor of a compartment full of the dead. This story's true protagonist. They needed to leave this place right now, Dokja urged. But why? If they didn't, they'd all die, he said, even before the next scenario started. But Dokja sighed. Someone protested. They couldn't be sure the person behind that door was an enemy. He was almost certainly a survivor who had already killed people. Did they really still want to meet him? So they searched for a way out instead. This door wouldn't budge. This one wouldn't move either. They just had to find one that worked. With the scenario over, the barrier had come down, but door after door was broken. Of the compartment's 8 doors, 3 were still unchecked. Dokja could only hope at least one of them still opened. And then, something made them freeze mid-motion, the moment before the true protagonist stepped into their world. Trapped in the ruined subway car, someone shouted for Dokja to hurry over. This door was their only way out. But the door was broken like everything else, and Kim Dokja knew it. This wrecked door was supposed to be their only hope. He weighed his options. He could spend coins to boost his strength like he had before, but blowing his coins this early, when he never knew what was coming, was a gamble he refused to take. So instead he turned to the ex-soldier Lee Hyun-sung and told him to use his skill. Hyun-sung, baffled, could only manage a confused sorry. Dokja already knew the answer. Hyun-sung's star backing and unique skills were exactly the same as they'd been in the novel he alone had read. As a soldier, the man was sure to have something useful. He told him to simply picture the skill in his head. Hyun-sung hesitated, admitting he had one, but had no idea how to trigger it. Then he braced himself and let out a roar. And it worked. A system message confirmed Hyun-sung had begun to trust him his starback power activating clean. The man was Dokja and noted dryly, very simple to read. But Dokja was already looking past the door. The steel barrier connecting to carriage 3707 would break soon. But if his prediction was right, that door wasn't the thing they should be worrying about. His face said it all. He had known this would happen. He'd warned them not to leave, and now the scenario he hadn't finished preparing for was catching up to them anyway. The others clutched their heads in agony, wailing that they never should have left the train. And then the Dakibi's voice cut in, amused, telling them they were all very lucky. The second scenario had arrived. The message spoke of a detached bridge, yet the bridge ahead still stood. Yusanga noticed something was wrong, but Dokja told her to forget it and just run. Because they'd left the train too early, the bridge hadn't detached yet. Sanga's observation was correct, which meant the bridge would absolutely detach, and soon. Racing toward Aksu Station, Dokja admitted it might be cheating. But it was impossible to clear this scenario without pulling a stunt like this. It would be close, but it looked like they'd make it. Then something vast rose from the water. A sea serpent, Dokja thought, no, judging by its sheer size, a sea commander. The bridge was collapsing. Dokja urged everyone to keep running, reassuring himself that water dragons didn't target survivors this early on. The creature had surfaced only to bring the bridge down. 200 meters left, and at this pace they'd cross before it fell. But the Dakibi wasn't done. A game that easy, it purred, would be no fun at all. Just running away was boring. Time to spice up the atmosphere. New horrors clawed their way onto the tracks. Zombies. Sanga screamed for Dokja as the dead closed in around them. But Dokja stayed calm and gave a single order. Everyone get down. And as the world erupted around them, her voice rang out one more time, calling his name. Chapter 10, Episode 2, and the disaster scenario was already tearing the group apart. The bridge behind them was severed. Kim Dokja had braced for a hard situation, but he hadn't planned on being trapped on the wrong side with Han Myung-go and his co-worker Yu Sang-ah. At least Lee Gil-young and Lee Hyun-sung had made it safely across to the other side. Then a message flared in the air. Someone had received a constellation's favor. And Dokja, for once, had no idea what came next. Through a constellation's help, a deus ex machina had been activated inside the scenario itself. A bridge of light conjured by a constellation. The even bridge would only let an even number of people cross, and it vanished the instant an odd number set foot on it. A deus ex machina was the rare right of a constellation to reach into a scenario directly, paid for at enormous cost. This almost never happened. Whatever constellation had chosen Yu Sang-ah as its incarnation had intervened to save her. Dokja needed to know exactly who her sponsor was, so he activated his character list. But the skill hit a wall. This person's information could not be read. Sang-ah wasn't even registered in the character list. He couldn't see her with his skill. A special sponsor? A mental barrier? None of it made sense. There was no way she'd have something like that already. Around them, the demonic people, ordinary humans twisted into monsters, were no better than zombies. But with a strong enough host, one of them became extremely dangerous. And of all the people it could have been, the host bearing down on them was Kim Namwon. Dokja fired off Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, only for it to fizzle out. The creature had no consciousness left to read. The skill was cancelled. It wouldn't work. They needed to cross that even bridge fast, but only 3 of them were left on this side. An odd number the bridge would reject. For the others to live, someone had to stay behind and die. Sang-ah screamed to be let go as she was dragged across, crying out Dokja's name, but the glasses guy no longer had any suggestions left. Han Myung-go, it turned out, had been the one shoved back, howling that Dokja had seriously left him behind. And the constellations approved. Secretive plotter marveled at how easily he'd been tricked, while another was moved by his sacrifice, and coins rained down. Dokja turned his character list on Namwon and hit the same blank wall, but the clues were there. Running on one leg meant a stigma, the lone-legged swift horse of the constellation Lamb Trickster. That constellation didn't grant mental barriers, and there was no way Han Myung-go had a defensive skill like that. So the truth clicked. His skill had failed on Sang-ah and Myungo for another reason entirely. They weren't characters who appeared in ways of survival at all. That was why the character list couldn't read them, and Dokja cursed himself for not seeing it sooner. But hindsight didn't cross bridges. Think, he told himself. He couldn't make it over on his own. Grab one of the demonic people and drag it across with him? No, the success rate was far too low, and the clock was merciless. Only 15 minutes remained before the scenario ended. The Dakibi taunted him for being so persistent, sneering across the field. Does any constellation wish to help this poor little incarnation? Nobody interested? TSK, how sad. Dokja's body was reaching its limits. This time he thought he might actually die. If only he had a fighting skill right now. And then, as if answering the thought, a notification bloomed. The exclusive skill bookmark had been activated. Bookmark? Even Dokja, the sole reader of this world, didn't recognize it. Character bookmark, 3 slots available, and the system pulled up the list. Whatever this was, it had just become his last chance. Cornered and playing dumb, Kim Dokja swore he had no idea what the stranger was talking about. It was a bluff. He knew exactly who this was. The moment he laid eyes on the man, his instincts screamed that facing him was impossible. His exclusive character list activated on its own, only to buckle under the sheer weight of information and collapse into a bare summary list. A hand closed around his throat. This was the man who had proven the very first way to survive in a ruined world. Yoo Jung-hyuk, the regressor whose grand tragedy had set this entire broken world in motion, now gripping Dokja by the neck and demanding answers. Sang-ah and the others could only watch, helpless. A barrier like the one from the subway sealed them out, and none of them could see a thing as Dokja dangled in the regressor's grasp. Yoo Jung-hyuk's first demand was simple. Your name? Kim Dokja, he answered. An odd name, the regressor noted. I get that a lot. Dokja shot back, unbothered even with a fist at his throat. The regressor already had the hang of spending coins, and so did Dokja. But it was clear which of them held the real power here. One main scenario and a single sub-scenario cleared, and Yoo Jung-hyuk was already a monster. From now on, he ordered, you only answer the questions I ask. This was the worst case Dokja had dreaded. In these early stages, Yoo Jung-hyuk was the single most dangerous person alive, his temperament soured by 3 brutal regressions, willing to do anything to reach his goal. So when the regressor snapped at him to watch his tongue, Dokja pushed back instead. Sorry, but you're younger than I am, Mr. Pro Gamer Yoo Jung-hyuk. The words landed like a blade. Yoo Jung-hyuk grew instantly wary of the stranger who somehow knew his name and his past. Dokja lied smoothly, claiming he worked at a game company and had followed the famous pro gamer's career. The truth was uglier. Yoo Jung-hyuk was only a character in a novel he had read. But one thing wasn't a lie. He really had been a fan, staying by this man's side across 3,000 chapters. He had liked him, resented him, hated him, and cheered for him all the same. The regressor said he'd forgive the insolence this once. He had only a single question. How did you survive in the subway? That, Dokja realized, was what this was really about. He needed a story convincing enough to fool a regressor. And as the sole reader of Ways of Survival, his understanding of the character Yoo Jung-hyuk was already sky high. Then something unexpected fired. The conditions for his exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, had been met, asking if he wished to activate it. Suddenly Dokja could hear the regressor's own thoughts. Only Lee Hyun-sung and Kim Namwon should have survived that compartment. Who is this guy? If he proves an inconvenience, I'll kill him. Reading his enemy's mind, Dokja crafted the perfect answer. I survived by pure luck, he said. An explosion in the compartment ahead let him snatch a fallen kid's cage of insects and clear the scenario by killing bugs. The regressor's mind reeled. The future has completely changed. People who were supposed to survive that battle royale hadn't. Dokja could see exactly why he was shocked. Even so, Yoo Jung-hyuk stayed suspicious. Too calm for a beginner, adapting far too smoothly to a world falling apart. The regressor's verdict formed cold and clear. This man was probably the one who killed Kim Namwon. Useful, maybe, but dangerous. Dokja tried to defuse it, asking to be let go and suggesting they head to Oxa Station together before time ran out. Yu Jung-hyuk didn't think so. Everything was simply too convenient. So the regressor reached for his SS-grade skill, Eye of Sage. The strongest detection skill there was, able to lay bare a person's attribute window and hidden information alike. Dokja realized it might even work in his favor, since he didn't yet know his own attributes and skills. He braced to have everything exposed, hoping to glimpse his own stats in return. Instead, his exclusive skill Fourth Wall activated. Fourth Wall detected Eye of Sage and slammed it shut, blocking the strongest detection skill in the world cold. The regressor recoiled, stunned. Bastard, just who the hell are you? For the first time, Yu Jung-hyuk truly did not know the answer. And the clock was ticking. The escape sub-scenario demanded they cross the broken bridge to the next station, with barely 2 minutes left and failure marked only by a question mark. Yu Jung-hyuk tried to read Kim Dokja the way he read everyone else, but his exclusive skill, the Fourth Wall, slammed shut and blocked the regressor's Eye of Sage cold. The regressor recoiled, staggered that his sight had hit something it couldn't pierce. Bastard, he hissed, unable to comprehend what was standing in front of him. Just who are you? Yu Jung-hyuk demanded, blade still raised. Dokja himself was reeling. He never thought he'd have a skill that could shut out the Eye of Sage. First bookmark, and now the Fourth Wall was manifesting too. But Yu Jung-hyuk had already decided he must kill him now, and Dokja scrambled. Hold on, wait a minute. The regressor wouldn't believe him anymore, so Dokja changed tactics on the fly. You can't clear the 46 scenario alone, he pressed. You need reliable companions you can trust. Don't tell me you're a Rieger. Yu Jung-hyuk started. How do you know that? Dokja shot back. It's not important who I am. What matters is that I could be of help to you. The regressor turned it over. If this man were another regressor, there was no way he wouldn't know of him. So he wasn't a regressor. Then what was he? I know of a future you don't, Kim Dokja told him. Yu Jung-hyuk. Yu Jung-hyuk activated his lie detection skill, and it verified that every word Dokja spoke was the truth. It seemed impossible. Another prophet besides Anna Croft, and here in South Korea, prophet, the only attribute in Ways of Survival that could see the future and passively nullify detection skills. In the whole world of the novel, only one individual had ever held it. Can you use future sight? The regressor asked. Something similar, Dokja allowed. I guess you knew I'd appear here. Indeed, Yu Jung-hyuk admitted. You also know about the future, don't you? Dokja pressed. You have a special power, but even you know your knowledge isn't perfect. A regressor relives the life he lived, so he knows future events. But the moment he uses that to change the present, the future he knew changes with it, and eventually he's forced to live in a world he no longer recognizes. Make me your companion, Dokja offered. I can fill in the parts you're lacking. A prophet was the single best ally the present Yu Jung-hyuk could ask for, and Dokja could play exactly that role. Because he was the only reader of this story, the regressor waited. Not just for the 46 scenario, but for the coming fight against those Zarathustra bastards. A prophet would definitely help. But could he trust him? A companion. And there were only 50 seconds left to complete the scenario. 40 seconds now. The clock bleeding away as Yu Jung-hyuk decided. I'll make you my companion, the regressor said. I made my decision. Then he seized Dokja by the throat. Wait, let go of Dokja choked out. Above them stretched Deus Ex Machina, a bridge of light that only an even number of people could cross, set to vanish the instant an odd number tried. Far below, the others waited helplessly. What happened to Dokja SSI? Someone asked. We can only wait. Somehow Dokja had convinced the damned regressor, and for now he was saved. But his excessive immersion had savagely drained his mental strength, and his exclusive skill, the reader's viewpoint, deactivated. It was nerve-wracking being stripped of the skill right when he needed it most. Still, he joined up with Yu Jung-hyuk this early in the story and crossed the bridge. That was good. Then the regressor spoke. I'll ask you one last thing. If you really are a prophet, then you should know your own future, right? And Dokja got an extremely bad feeling. Will I, the regressor mused, or will I not? Let go of his hand? Shit, this fucking psycho, Dokja thought, dangling over the void as Yu Jung-hyuk went silent. But Dokja knew this man better than anyone. Before you decide, he said, I have two things to say, so treat me fairly from now on. First, I am not your subordinate. Second, I'll cooperate with you, but you promise to cooperate with me. Maybe, the regressor said flatly. So what's your answer? Release your hand and get lost. You damn son of a bitch, Dokja spat back. Yu Jung-hyuk called him up. I believe you now, he said. You definitely are a prophet. Seriously, Dokja breathed, barely believing he'd survive the gamble. Son of a bitch, the words still ringing between them, the two now bound as companions. But then the announcement dropped. You have failed to clear the scenario. And Kim Dokja realized his troubles were far from over. Kim Dokja fought to stay conscious, every nerve screaming that this hurt more than anything he'd braced for. He couldn't afford to black out. Not now. He was choking, coughing, gagging on acid and darkness as something monstrous swallowed him whole. Somehow, he'd managed to reach the stomach without getting ripped to shreds. It was exactly where the novel said he'd end up. He looked out over the impossible cavern of flesh and muttered that it was an incredible sight. Then, less poetically, God damn it. Chapter 13. Episode 3, Contract. He cursed Yu Jung-hyuk, that psycho, for shoving a would-be companion down a monster's throat. To survive this was apparently the price of standing beside him. Dokja understood the man too well. Ever since his first failed turn, the regressor had never made real companions. Hailed as a savior, powerful beyond measure, Yu Jung-hyuk had become a loner by design. To Yu Jung-hyuk, humans were only ever underlings or enemies. Nothing in between. So this was a test. A demand to solve his own survival and earn the right to stand as an equal. Dokja pulled up his message log and confirmed the scenario he'd failed to clear. The ichthyosaur was starting to move. According to Ways of Survival, the beast began secreting stomach acid roughly 3 hours after swallowing its prey, which meant Dokja didn't have much time left. A pity, someone mused, that things had turned out this way. It had all been very interesting. A Dakibi. The imp confirmed it, then paused, thrown that Dokja didn't look the least bit surprised. That was because he'd been waiting. Just wait, he thought, aiming the promise past the imp at Yu Jung-hyuk himself. He wouldn't just survive the test. He'd grow strong enough to rival the regressor outright. And then Yu Jung-hyuk would have no choice but to accept him as a companion. Dokja turned to the imp and cut to business. There were coins to take from him, the reward the imp needed to collect. The Dakibi blinked. Coins, you say? Failing the scenario carried a price, and Dokja pointed out that price was paid in coins, not lives. If failure meant death, the entry would have said death, not thrown up 3 question marks. The reward line read 200 coins for crossing the broken bridge to Oksu Station, which meant, Dokja grinned, there was room to negotiate. The imp was genuinely surprised. No wonder Dokja had been drawing the attention of the constellations, reaching this conclusion off such a tiny clue. Fine, it conceded. Fail, and you could survive as long as you pay in coins. Then it named its number. It would let Dokja keep his life for 5,100 coins. Dokja balked, coins nowhere near that total, and called the imp a shameless bastard. So die instead, it offered lightly. I'm not obligated to take your coins at all. Comply, or be killed on the spot, the imp warned. Dokja called the bluff. Then kill me. What? Kill me? He repeated, not blinking. You can't, can you? Of course it couldn't, Dokja reasoned. The imp was having far too much fun with him to end it. If it meant to kill him, it never would have descended to talk. And there were plenty of constellations enjoying the show. Infuriating, the imp admitted. Then Dokja named it outright. A low-grade Dakibi called Baihyung. How's life as a streamer treating you? Dokja asked, as if they were old acquaintances. Aren't your sponsors stingy? Baihyung reeled, demanding to know how a mere human knew his name. Knew his broadcasts had grown dull lately. Let's talk after you close the channel, Dokja whispered, pulling the imp somewhere the constellations couldn't listen in. Now the imp said, Tell me, how does an ordinary human like you know anything about the Starstream broadcasting? The Starstream system, Dokja explained, was built to relay its contents across the entire universe. The subscribers were constellations in distant galaxies, the actors were humans like him, and the streamers linking them were the Dakibi. But that wasn't the point, Dokja said, and asked the real question. Didn't Baehyung want to become the king of the Dakibi? Didn't he want to surpass Dokgak and Gildao and stand as the greatest streamer among all the Dakibi? Dakibi Baehyung, Dokja said, sign a contract with me. I'll make you the king of the Dakibi. Trapped inside the belly of the beast, Kim Dokja made the Dakibi Baehyung an offer nobody had ever dared to make. Sign a contract with me. And the terms were absurd. I'll make you the king of the Dakibis, he promised, like it was nothing at all. Baehyung burst out laughing. Crazy, he cackled. You're completely crazy. Then the pieces clicked into place. Back in the subway, during the sponsor selection, Dokja had turned down every constellation offering their patronage. He hadn't chosen a single one of them. And Baehyung still had no idea how a mere human even knew the star stream was broadcasting. You've misunderstood, Baehyung warned. Unlike constellations, a Dakibi can't become your sponsor. I can't accept that offer. But Dokja had never asked for a sponsor. I don't need your strength, he said. What I need is your channel. He wanted an exclusive stream contract, signed right there and then. Baehyung reeled. A stream contract? Now. It was a deal meant only for Dakibis and constellations. The constellation's incarnation appears on a channel, and the Dakibi schemes a portion of the coins earned as commission. They called it sponsorship, but the contracted incarnation was really just a slave, never allowed to intervene in the deal. This, Baehyung thought, was hilarious. A measly bug of a human with no sponsor, daring to ask for a stream contract. Where could he possibly have learned such a thing? It's worth signing with me precisely because I have no sponsor, Dokja countered. Ask yourself why constellations join a channel at all. The subscribers split into two kinds. There were the fun seekers, who tuned in just to kill their boredom, and the incarnation seekers, hunting for someone worth sponsoring. Satisfy one group, and you got a popular channel. Baehyung was impressed by the knowledge, but sneered that Dokja's subscriber count still hadn't even cracked 3 digits. Not even 3 digits. Shut up, Dokja snapped and spit out already. What if, Dokja pressed, a channel could satisfy both the fun seekers and the incarnation seekers at once? There's no way that's possible, Baehyung started to say. Normally, the incarnation seekers abandon a channel the moment sponsor selection ends. But what if the incarnation refused to pick any sponsor at all? And what if that unsponsored incarnation's abilities somehow transcended those of the sponsored ones? Wait, Baehyung gasped. Is this why you didn't choose? Yes, Dokja answered. That's right. He was betting the constellations were already in an uproar over him, and told Baehyung to open the channel. Can he see the future? They'd be whispering. Is he a real prophet? Who is this human challenging the regressor? Stop, Baehyung snarled. An ordinary human cannot beat sponsored incarnations. That's the rule of this world. Just shut up and do as I say, Dokja said flatly. I'll show you it's possible. Didn't I already tell you I'd make you king of the Dakibis? Baehyung tried to stall, demanding they first settle the scenario failure and the 5,100 coins. But Dokja cut him off. What are you talking about? I didn't fail. He was certain he'd fulfilled the conditions by now. Just do it, he said. Just open the channel. It's about to begin, Dokja said, and a new notice bloomed before them. A hidden scenario. Clear condition. Kill the beast and escape its stomach. Reward coins. Failure, death. Cornered, Baehyung caved, wailing to the constellations to calm down and swearing the earlier shutdown had only been a server error, not anything he'd done on purpose. If the broadcast stayed down, he'd be extinguished. So when Dokja asked whether these were really the only items for sale, and whether there was a search function, Baehyung had no choice but to cooperate. A streamer's vow was no small thing. Dokja had threatened Baehyung into opening the one thing that mattered. The Starstream's cash shop. The Dakibi bag unfurled into a storefront of skills and gear, and Dokja's balance sat at a modest 5,100 coins. With a difficult scenario now underway, Dokja got straight to work. Baehyung, grudgingly, pointed him to the search button in the lower right corner. Thanks, Dokja said. So, Dokja began and typed his first query. Search, Ancient Dragon. How the hell do you even know about ancient dragons? Bai Hyung demanded. I just tried a cool name, Dokja shrugged. The listing was real. The Ancient Dragon's Heart, SS rated, near infinite magic, priced at $1.5 million. But it was already sold out, snapped up by someone in Italy whose filthy rich sponsor had bought it for them. For a moment, Dokja almost regretted not taking a sponsor himself. He kept going. Search, Purest Sword Force. Search, Great Demon's Eyeball. Just how do you know all these names? Bai Hyung sputtered. But when the purchases finally came through, Bai Hyung stared in disbelief. For mucus packs and 4 thorns? Why would you ever need such useless junk? You don't need to know, Dokja said and grabbed the cheapest, strangest stock on the shelf for 100 coins apiece. With that, 800 coins were spent. You won't get a refund even if you regret it, Bai Hyung warned. I know, Dokja said. Above them, a secretive plotter constellation quietly took interest in his plan. Then the channel BI 7623 went dark, closing once more. Don't forget, Bai Hyung reminded him, I haven't actually agreed to your offer yet. They'd agreed to negotiate the contract terms only after Dokja cleared this scenario successfully. I know, Dokja said. Do your best to clear it, Bai Hyung told him, since I can't stay by your side the whole time. Get going then, Dokja replied. You really are a shameless bastard. Hang in there, Bai Hyung offered, and the channel BI 7623 flickered open once more. May the story bless you. The clock read 21:41. There wasn't much time left before the stomach acid began to secrete. Alone now, Dokja steadied himself. I'll definitely, he vowed, leave this place alive. And with a sharp cry, he moved. Chapter 15. Episode 3, Contract, Part 3. The scenario grinds on, and Kim Dokja is still the only person alive who knows how the story ends. How long had it even been? Time had blurred into hunger and exhaustion, one endless stretch of surviving. A single doubt gnawed at him. Could he really do this? Could an ordinary man actually pull it off? Because he reminded himself of the truth. He was just a common reader. He wasn't the main character. He never had been. He was the one who had read about all of this from the outside. And yet, waking to the ruin around him, one thought settled cold in his chest. It wasn't a dream. This was real. Even so, a voice praised him. You really are awesome, it said. He had done the impossible. The message bloomed in the air. The constellations admire your ability to survive. Unseen watchers thrilled by the man who refused to die. And with their admiration came a reward. The constellations had sponsored him 100 coins. 4 days had passed since the stage began. For brutal days that should have been a death sentence for an ordinary reader. He looked at the stone hog's spines in his hands. Even he never imagined he'd end up using them like this. Then the notifications cascaded. The hidden scenario had ended. 9,000 coins in compensation. First to ever hunt a grade 7 species, plus 1,000 more as an achievement reward. He had won, and won big. He explained his method aloud. The stone hog was a coastal creature that fed on the smallest species around it. Its thorns, pulled straight from the shop listing, were made to be driven into a victim's skin. He had turned a monster's own weapon against it, and he'd learned another trick. The mucus of the Hammersea horse was far more potent than he'd expected. Before attacking with the spines, he'd smeared that mucus over his own skin and clothes as a shield. Then, through the thorn, he drained the vital force straight out of the ichthyosaur to quiet his thirst and hunger. His stamina rose. The mucus, it turned out, was immune to digestive fluids, protection that species had evolved after being eaten alive again and again. The Dakibi could only marvel at how much this reader already knew. The constellations roared their approval. What an excellent way to survive. Dokja, unimpressed, told the imp to shut up and open the Dakibi bag. He pulled out the ichthyosaur core. Put it up for the Dakibi auction, he ordered. The imp sighed and told him to do whatever he wanted. But first, the imp said, let's take a quick look at the ads before moving on to the next stage. It laid out a transmission contract, clauses binding Incarnation and Dakibi together, splitting the revenue from his broadcast by a ratio to be settled between them. Here's the contract, the imp offered breezily. Don't humans love this sort of thing? It doesn't really mean anything. But Dokja, the sole reader, knew the fine print. There was one crucial part. A transmission contract, he reminded it, was a sole agreement. He wasn't agreeing to anything until they discussed the pay ratio. The imp, caught off guard, stammered a nervous laugh. It made its pitch. It would waive the channel fee and offer 5 to 5. For every 100 coins, he'd get 50. Except the math didn't add up, and Dokja knew it was being cheated. This is normal, the imp insisted. He was an incarnation without a sponsor, and donating to one meant the constellations owed a huge fee to the Dakibi. Haven't you already enjoyed plenty thanks to me? Dokja shot back, refusing to be squeezed. He drove the terms into the ground. 10 to 0. He wouldn't pay a single penny, and the imp could keep only its commission. The Dakibi reeled. That's ridiculous. The imp scrambled, 7 to 3, then 8 to 2, I can't go lower. Dokja calmly mused that another channel, Gildel's, was doing well these days. Maybe he'd take his business there instead. The constellations grumbled about the endless negotiation. Fine, damn it, the imp caved. So will you sign? Yes, Dokja said, and one more thing. He wanted a separate down payment. 5,000 coins up front, before he'd put his name to anything. For days had passed since he'd last seen the outside. The original goal was 2, but even Yu Jung-hyuk, the regressor, had once taken 4. So it wasn't bad at all. He'd signed a contract and pocketed his 5,000 coins. Maybe, he thought, he made more money than he expected. It really was amazing being the only reader. He'd never had a contract go this well in his life, and his exclusive skill, fourth wall, hummed quietly in use. Testing it, he asked the imp to open his functions window. Impossible, it said, maybe a glitch, even as the Dakibi tried to interfere with the system itself. Then fourth wall activated, and the imp's meddling simply bounced off. Confusion flickered across its face. To think this skill was absolute even against the Dakibi. Dokja's quiet edge had a name, and it was untouchable. Then the message came. He had entered the region of the second main scenario. The next stage was already opening beneath his feet. The land here was deeply polluted, and the ground itself seemed to warn him. Here, of all places, he'd been exposed to a poisonous fog, and somewhere above, the abyssal black flame dragon was already watching with insidious interest. And just like that, it begins. The second scenario, and a far deadlier stage, was about to swallow him whole. The region was deeply contaminated by the scenario, so Kim Dokja took a deep breath and pushed toward the underground with haste. Every second the poison lingered, his odds got worse. He'd use an item to survive the toxic air, but its effect was wearing off fast. He'd burned too much time already, and he needed to reach the underground before he had nothing left to breathe through. Then, through the poison haze, a voice. Save me. Save me. Someone was still alive out here. That shouldn't have been possible, and Dokja knew it. A wounded woman, barely clinging on, begging him to save her. The base station, Aksu, had already been destroyed. The nearest shelter left was the underground stop Dokja was racing toward, Gumho Station. He carried the injured woman down toward the 4th underground exit, counting on the safety the station was supposed to offer. But when he demanded they open the door, the people inside refused. They claimed the place was already full and told him to get lost. Dokja frowned. This wasn't a development the novel had ever described. Their refusal cracked into panic and screaming. Something inside the shelter had gone very wrong, and voices cried out to run. A system message flickered up regardless. You have entered a safe zone. Dokja pressed an item into the woman's mouth. Full recovery would be difficult, but it would at least neutralize the poison eating at her. Suspicious that this scene was off-script, he pulled up his character list to check who was really running this shelter. And there, one name jumped out at him. The thugs demanded to know who he was. He answered flatly, Kim Dokja. Then it became clear what kind of men these were. They bragged openly about assaulting the girl he'd carried in, the kind of obvious, disposable villains that clutter every post-apocalyptic story. They told him to drop his bags and get out, and they'd let him keep his life. Dokja had thought real people would be less of a cliché than this. Somehow they were worse. Then a new prompt bloomed in the air. a bounty scenario. Neutralize the obstructing party within 5 minutes. The constellations watching, it seemed, were annoyed with these men too. The thugs swung, and Dokja didn't even flinch. They panicked, unable to understand why he was unharmed, certain he must have a powerful constellation backing him. The truth was simpler. His overall level sat at 33, while their stats were still stuck in single digits. The gap in stamina, strength, and agility was a chasm they couldn't cross. The leader was Bang Kyeolsu of the Gumho group, the stupidest man in the whole crew. In the original novel, Dokja recalled, Yu Jung-hyuk was supposed to have killed him by now. Kyeolsu sneered that they were the same kind, killers both, that he and Dokja were somehow alike. But Dokja's exclusive skill, the fourth wall, coldly blocked the buff Kyeolsu's constellation tried to feed him. The man's edge simply switched off. The monarch of the small fries, delighted, handed Dokja 100 coins, cheerfully abandoning its own incarnation the moment he started losing. Standing over the broken man, Dokja asked why he'd done it. That the world had ended was just an excuse. And in Kyeolsu's eyes he saw it. Not instinct. The eyes of someone who'd been in despair long before the apocalypse ever came. Just like me, Dokja thought. Maybe those words weren't wrong after all. 10 seconds remained on the sub-scenario. Time ran out. The clear conditions were met, and the coins poured in. But it was a cruel arithmetic, and it left Dokja to carry on into a new life he'd chosen with open eyes. He told the survivors to take him to wherever the Gumho group's stronghold was. Because Kim Dokja already knew the shape of the road ahead, and the true monsters, the regressor, the swordswoman, the writer whose fates the novel had promised, were all still waiting. Part 1 ends here. Part 2 is where the story he read finally comes for him. Stick around.